On this Sunday night, Team Canada makes a splash in Tokyo. Canadian women swim to silver, winning Canada's first medals of these Summer Olympics. The race to vaccinate. Health workers target communities with lower vaccination rates as COVID cases surge south of the border. Wildfire waiting game. Officials report fewer fires burning in BC while keeping a nervous eye on the weather.
Global National with Robin Gill. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Team Canada has taken the podium in Tokyo. The women are leading the way, picking up 2 silver medals in the pool, this country's first hardware of these summer games. That silver finish also puts Canada's golden penny into an elite Olympic class. Crystal Goomansingh explains in our top story.
With a silver medal around her neck, Penny Oleksiak's collection grows to 5. She is now tied as Canada's most decorated Summer Olympian. After the win, she said when she gets in the water every time, it is to get a medal for the girls. The strength of the 21-year-old from Toronto pulled the women's 4x100 relay team towards the podium and the first medal for Canada at the Tokyo Games. Oleksiak, Rebecca Smith, Maggie McNeil, and Kayla Sanchez have been swimming together for years, and their bond is as solid as their newly acquired hardware. Sanchez called the victory sick. Jennifer Abel and Melissa Citrini-Beaulieu also earned silver medals. Their 3-meter synchro diving performance started slow, but on their third dive, they found their groove, and after number 5, they knew they were on the podium. Shortly after arriving in Tokyo, Citrini-Beaulieu explained why she and Abel click.
I think the first thing is we're not only partners, we're also friends. And we just have a really good communication and we enjoy what we do together.
These are Abel's 4th games, but the first for Citrini-Beaulieu.
Yeah!
Her parents watching back in Canada, overjoyed by their daughter's success.
L'accomplissement de toute sa carrière.
The Canadian women's softball team is also looking to make everyone proud. They'll be playing for a bronze. Canada has not won a medal in softball before. The women did come close in 2008, finishing 4th. That was the last year softball was included in the Summer Games. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
And the men's golf tournament has hit a stroke of bad luck. The Olympic event will get underway this week without 2 of its top athletes. American golfer Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm from Spain both pulled out of the competition after testing positive for COVID-19. It's the second time in as many months that Rahm, the world's top-ranked golfer, has tested positive. In June, he was forced to pull out of the Memorial Tournament with a large lead, despite the fact that he said he had been vaccinated less than 2 weeks earlier. So far, there have been at least 137 COVID-19 cases linked to the Tokyo Games. Well, the world is witnessing a surge in COVID-19 cases, largely driven by the highly contagious Delta variant. Here in Canada, just over half the population is now fully vaccinated, but first-dose vaccinations appear to have hit a plateau. As Catherine Ward explains, there's a new push underway in Toronto to change that.
With music in the air and open invitations.
Do you need a vaccine?
The push to get COVID-19 vaccines into arms was in full swing in Toronto on Sunday.
We really are targeting the 18 to 44-year-old age group because we're seeing that the vaccine rates are slightly lower in that group.
Some people were there with loved ones, carrying big hopes to travel abroad.
In South Africa, the whole vaccine process is very long. It's taking quite long. So I'd rather go now that I'm fully vaxxed than to go when I wasn't.
13-year-old Gabby has her sights set on September and getting back in the classroom.
I'm going to high school, so it's a new thing for me, and I'm going to meet a lot of new people, and I think the vaccine is also going to help me with not feeling nervous about maybe spreading it.
Music to the ears for healthcare workers doing what they can to encourage people to roll up their sleeves.
We need everyone to get their first and second doses before school, so we're really keen to get our youth out.
More than 80% of eligible Canadians have received 1 shot. 62% are fully vaccinated. As Canada remains a global leader for vaccine coverage, every inoculation is another piece of collective protective armor.
We've been very successful in getting almost 20% of our doses are first doses. So we're really glad about that, because that means some patients who have not had the opportunity thus far are able to walk in, get their shot, and start their series.
Recent data suggests the country's demand for vaccination is slowing. Doctors say efforts like Sunday's clinic in Toronto will help further move the needle in the right direction.
I think this is going to pay huge dividends going forward, especially with the Delta variant, because we are now, over 80% covered. This is going to really cut transmission chains. The risk is not completely gone, but we are in a much better position than we were even a couple of months ago.
Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
And the push is also on to vaccinate more people south of the border. COVID-19 cases are rising in all 50 states, and it comes just 2 weeks before Canada is set to reopen the border to fully vaccinated American tourists. As Jennifer Johnson explains, frontline doctors in the U.S. are blaming vaccine hesitancy.
Across the U.S., COVID-19 vaccination rates have hit their lowest level since late January. 30 states have yet to vaccinate at least half their residents, even as figures now show 99% of all COVID hospitalizations and deaths are among the unvaccinated.
The tragedy is everyone who's in a hospital right now from COVID was there by choice.
Doctors are pleading with Americans to get the shot to bring this fourth surge of the pandemic under control. But even some who have gotten sick and hospitalized still doubt they'll get vaccinated.
I had not received it. In retrospect, I honestly don't know if it would have made a difference.
Los Angeles and San Diego counties are now reporting their highest number of new cases since February. On Monday, St. Louis will again mandate masks indoors. Missouri's Republican Attorney General plans to sue the city and county, even as cases in that state have shot up 70% in 2 weeks.
The UK variant was the most contagious virus we had ever seen. It took over the entire state in 3 months. The Delta variant did that in 3 weeks.
San Francisco's Bar Alliance is expected to announce Monday bars will start requiring proof of vaccination from customers. Doctors are getting increasingly concerned about what will happen in the colder months ahead, as one model predicts a tripling of the current death toll by mid-October.
Anyone who goes out and gets vaccinated right now is going to have a vaccine that protects them through the fall and the winters.
In Florida, where cases are also skyrocketing,
just wanted to get the word out.
Police officers in St. Petersburg are going door to door, encouraging the unvaccinated to get immunized, as Governor Ron DeSantis joins a growing list of Republicans now pushing the reluctant to get protected. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
In Brazil, protests broke out in several cities this weekend, with residents angry over the country's deepening COVID-19 crisis. In Sao Paulo last night, protesters clashed with police after thousands marched earlier in the day, calling for President Jair Bolsonaro's impeachment. Polls suggest Bolsonaro's popularity is sinking after a slew of scandals, from his rejection of pandemic measures to corruption allegations linked to Brazil's slow vaccine rollout. More than 500,000 Brazilians have died from COVID-19. And to another protest now happening here at home. Thousands of migrant workers took to Parliament Hill today to call for changes to Canada's immigration laws. They want access to the same rights and freedoms enjoyed by Canadians. As our chief political correspondent David Akin explains, they hope to make their cause an election issue.
Most are not Canadians, and yet they've come to the seat of Canada's government demanding rule changes which they hope will set them on a path to becoming Canadian.
Prime Minister Trudeau has a test of his sincerity. He says he wants to build back better, but that's not possible when 1 in 23 people who are migrants without permanent resident status don't have equal rights.
Without those rights, migrant workers were left vulnerable during the pandemic.
These guys are farm workers like myself.
Omar Walcott points to the poster of some of the 14 migrant workers who died in Canada last year, most from COVID-19, caught in unsafe living conditions.
They die underneath Trudeau's watch, so I really think that Trudeau is responsible for these guys.
I think this issue has come to the forefront. I think with COVID, I think it really put the spotlight on these on the conditions that they're working in. So I think if anything, it'll be, I think, more on the minds of people when it comes to election, for sure.
The vast majority of these migrants arrived in Canada legally to help harvest food on Canada's farms or help care for the elderly, the sick, or the very young. But as work permits or visas expired, they found themselves unable or unwilling to return home because of the pandemic. Now, 1.6 million are stuck in immigration limbo, working in Canada without labour law protection or access to Canada's healthcare system.
We work, we contribute to the economy of this country. I don't see why we should be treated badly. I don't see why we should be treated separately.
Many, like Mayanwe, who is from Cameroon, have been trying for years to become a Canadian citizen.
I love the country. It's always been my dream country.
The opposition New Democrats think that the governing Liberals are vulnerable on this issue of how migrant workers were treated during the pandemic. And in communities where there's lots of immigrants, think Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, you can bet Liberal candidates are going to be challenged to defend that record. Jeff.
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Still ahead, wildfire watch. Crews are battling more than 250 blazes in BC. Will the weather bring some much-needed relief? Typhoon Infa has now made landfall in China. The storm is pummeling the country's east coast with powerful winds and unrelenting rain. Up to 35 centimeters could fall in some areas. More than 300,000 people living near the coast have been forced to flee. Hundreds of flights and train services have been canceled, and the public is being urged to remain indoors. Wow, take a look at that terrifying scene in India. A massive landslide was caught on camera. Large chunks of rock came tumbling down the mountain, destroying a bridge in a matter of seconds. At least 9 people were killed, several others were injured. Days of monsoon rains have triggered deadly landslides and flooding in many parts of that country. And now to the wildfire fight in British Columbia. It is another hot and dry day with more than 250 fires burning in the province. Global's Lauren Pullen is keeping an eye on the growing fire near the town of Oliver for us tonight. So Lauren, what's the latest on the situation there?
Some good news overnight, Jeff. Fire crews tell me that no new homes or properties have been threatened, and we are now able to get close enough to take a look at just some of the aftermath. Fire just tore through this entire hillside near Oliver. It came alarmingly close to homes that are just up the road from here, and this spot is just one of several areas throughout the region that are charred by flames. And crews were still working tirelessly, of course, as this fire continues to grow. All the evacuation orders in place are expected to stay, with tensions and concerns incredibly high.
This fire would jump the road down here and start burning this way again.
Do you feel like they're getting it under control at this point?
Hard to say.
And while there is good news with no new evacuations, it is still an uphill battle to try and gain control of this blaze.
We're still seeing challenges with the weather conditions and smoke conditions, which can impede the ability of the helicopters to get up in the air. We've been quite successful, though, with those working around those conditions and getting our crews out to those communities that have been threatened.
A few hours north of here in Sycamoose, BC, where a wildfire has forced basically the entire tourist town to be evacuated, they are being told to expect to remain out of their homes for at least another week. A major highway there remains closed as well as crews continue to fight those flames. But the biggest concern, Jeff, across the entire region continues to be this punishing weather. We are already in the mid-30s. The temperature is only expected to climb in the next week or so with no rain in sight. Jeff.
Lauren Pullen reporting near Oliver, BC. Thanks, Lauren. Still ahead, getting to know Canada's first Indigenous Governor General. The story of Mary Simon, next.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a thrill to see me in person.
Jackie Mason thrilled many fans over his legendary comedy career. He passed away Saturday evening after being hospitalized in New York for the past couple of weeks. Mason started his career as a rabbi with a gift for injecting humor into his sermons before taking that wit from the synagogue to the nightclub. Over the years, he became a regular on The Ed Sullivan Show. He won a Tony Award and an Emmy Award for his one-man show, The World According to Me.
Don't get nervous. I'm not going to make fun of the President of the United States. I can't stand anybody who makes fun of a person just because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Younger audiences may remember Mason best for his recurring role on The Simpsons as Rabbi Hyman Kristofsky, the father of Krusty the Clown. He won an Emmy for that one too, by the way. Jackie Mason was 93. And tonight, we are on the eve of a major milestone in Canadian history. On Monday, Mary Simon will be sworn in as Canada's 30th Governor-General, becoming the country's first Indigenous woman to hold the prestigious position. David Akin reports.
The path to Rideau Hall for Mary Simon began in 1947 in the northern Quebec village of Nk'Mip, an Inuit village of a few hundred on the shores of Ungava Bay.
My mother was Inuk and my father was from the south, was manager of the local Hudson Bay Company Post. I spent my adolescence in Nunavik, living a very traditional lifestyle.
As a child, Simon was forced to attend a federal day school in nearby Kuujjuaq, and she was forbidden to speak her own language, Inuktitut, and though the school was in Quebec, instruction was in English only. By the 1970s, she had joined the CBC Northern Service as a broadcaster, and by the end of the decade, she had begun her transition into public service, working for various organizations representing Canada's Inuit.
She knows what it's like living on the land, where she's come from and where she is today, but she has never, ever forgotten where she's come from.
In the early 80s, she attended constitutional talks hosted by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau and quickly made her mark challenging the PM.
Everybody's going to shake their head and they're going to say, well, we spent way too much time on the equality clause and yet we're talking about a fundamental right.
I wish you and your sisters would take it out of your head that somehow we're deliberately trying to frustrate the concept of equality. At least in the law, everybody is assured here, you hear, that we are not. Simon?
As people, we have one interest, and that is our collective and individual rights. And all I'm saying here is that as someone that represents both sides, I'd like to see the equality clause once and for all settled.
In the 1990s, the Canadian government would ask Simon to serve as Canada's ambassador for circumpolar affairs and Canada's ambassador to Denmark. Most recently, she has worked to improve Inuit education.
Mary Simon has been a diplomat. She has been a leader. She also has run foundations in relation to children and youth. She's been a tireless advocate for Inuit.
Simon says she fully expects to continue her lifelong work advancing the interests of Inuit and other Indigenous peoples, now as the Canadian representative of Queen Elizabeth II.
There are very important responsibilities associated with my role that will help the working relationship of Canadians and Indigenous people.
And beginning Monday, she will begin that new chapter in a life of work for the Arctic and its peoples. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is this pair of Blue Jays in Sydney, Nova Scotia. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.